if you get to use their truck, their GMC truck, and you can plow your own ground with the white man's tractor, because that's a good white man, right? And you can run your little stuff around because the biggest man in town that own the cotton gin, that own all that stuff, why, you just good old, when my father went back to Arkansas one time, the big man in town, remember every town had a main, okay. So he told my father, he says, so-and-so, I miss you more than any nigga that ever left. Now my brother, my old was with him. And he'd been out to California. He was 13 when we left the South. But he'd been out to California now for 3, 4, 5, whatever it was. So my father grabbed his hand and wasn't looking. He just looking at the white. He had his hand so hard, it probably almost broke it. Nigga, you better keep your mouth shut. Because he's looking at it like we would have looked at it. I miss you more than any nigga that ever, and my father's going through his thing, and that's fine. He knew what he was doing. My brother been out there too long. He didn't forgot all of that. Okay. So now, for us here, we done already mastered boss man, our boss man right here. We done blended the early 1900s with the 1960s and early 70s and our Islamic character and Islamic behavior. We blended those and nobody, see, even the FBI, they don't have nobody alive that was, they didn't even start the FBI till 1919 something. Palmer raids, they was getting ready to start it around 1919, yeah. This is 1919, 1918, 1920s, something like that, yeah. That's when they started the FBI. Okay. Now, you got to remember that the FBI was started in 1908. When did J. Edgar Hoover become it? J. Edgar Hoover had to become the head of it in 1919, 1920. Because first it was just, okay, but that's not important. Here's what's important to keep our trend going.
1924 was when J. Edgar Hoover.
That's what, okay. Yeah, that's when it kind of taken, okay. Now, you got to remember, okay, we're observant to our environment. We observing everything in the environment. We have less people and less money, maybe not less, than everybody, all the Muslims. They got an easier job than we do, all of them. When you come here, I'm sure the first thing they told you, you go to Masjid al-Islam, my God, boy, look at here. And then probably the stuff you heard, I'm sure you haven't seen none of what they said here, right?
The family's doing well.
Yeah.
That's what they told me. That was what I got warned about. You got a wife and kid.
Right.
Stay away from them.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
The family's doing fine.
Yeah, they love it. I mean, and the kids come in and have a good time. They need more kids running around like the other kids used to do. They run around and have a good time. But here's the point. The scare tactic didn't work. And so you stayed here long enough to get a picture, a reasonable picture of what's going on here. Okay, other people don't have that pleasure. They come in, look, and listen. They see one thing and say, that's what they was talking about, and they gone. But in the meantime, all all of what we talk about, long-range goals, patience, constancy, struggle, sacrifice, those are the things that we use. We use those things in our daily life. We use them right here. So longevity, right? The grand picture, the grand scheme, leaving your fingerprints on the pages of history, all of that stuff we're involved in every day, all the time. All right, and we've been involved in it. Okay, so when they come up with this stuff right here, so for 30 years, Masjid al-Islam been doing this. Other flyers explain that the Islamic Institute for Counter-Zionist American Psychological Warfare primary goal is to counter the concerted efforts of the enemies of Islam to sustain a false characterization of Islam and Muslims as a dangerous threat to global stability and tranquility. That mission has already led As-Sabiqun to deny involvement in the Islamist terrorist 9/11. There's nothing never been proven. They just say it, right? They say that, and it don't look like 19, how many? 15. 15 of those 19 people came from Saudi Arabia. Well, why don't they call it Saudi Arabia? Anyway, and to characterize the acts of Hamas and Hezbollah as justified war on Jews, we say Israelis. The Institute is the group's primary project to keep its movement going after the loss of several branches in California. Well, they paying attention because Sacramento, LA is going, 2 in LA, two in LA, 2 big ones in LA. Also our store and shop, As-Sabiqun in LA, all of that. So San Diego, this is true, they're staying up on us. And I could see when they wrote this because the program that we had it at that building. And non-Negroes came, and they looked like they was Zionists. They looked Zionist. As part of its ideology, As-Sabiqun, are also actively preparing for the death of the United States. Okay, but I just want to mention a few things now. If you go back, this is 10 years ago. The death of the United States and its institutions was somewhat clear, but they're almost absolute. You have to be blind not to see them now. If it's not the total collapse of the United States, it's an 80% decline, For sure. It's not even the middle class is, well, you could say almost gone, but they're not here. And then the ones that are in the middle class are working 2 and 3 jobs. Can you imagine? They working. Can you imagine how upset? And they look at their parents, all the people in their 50s, well, 55s on down to 45. Those are the down to 40. They looking at their parents. They had it good. They come up in the golden 50s. That's what they used to call it. One white man could work, and a black man too, if he worked in these factories. They could work, buy a brand new Chevrolet, buy a house, 3-bedroom house, and the white, that's what all those suburban housewives always getting in trouble with having sex out of. All that came from that period in the late 50s and 60s because they didn't have nothing to do, housewives. Okay. That's not possible now. Okay, we're paying attention to the time, place, and circumstance we're living in. And we're paying real attention. You can just judge yourself. What have you heard that's been out of character here, out of the years you've been here? How much sense it make? You can just add it up. You could tell whether I've been lying, whether I'm crazy or whatever. It don't make no. You can tell. Or this nigga got a crystal ball. Like people begin after you write so long, people start looking on the table and wondering, how is that possible? It's too simple. Read Quran and Hadith. It tells about the symptoms of the rise and fall of civilizations. Go to history. It's too simple. Like they think gotta know. All you gotta do is do that and look at your time in which you're living in. You gotta pay attention and then go tweak the system. Go try it every now and then to make sure, that's what they do. Okay. So that's working. And you have to test your system to see how heavy they punching, who's tripping, why are they tripping. You have to do that. Okay, you have to remember, for the first period of time, we're going to have not a free ride, but whenever they come at us for the last many decades, they're going to come with old-time stuff because they don't figure they're used to dealing with black people. Black people do not progress beyond certain points. Cars, fame, they don't, you know what I mean? And after they get up, even if they're a little leader, like, they turn and go back to chasing everybody in the group's wife and, you know what I mean, stealing. They used to that. And they think that all of them, they thought up till 10 minutes ago, they were sure. That's the nigga. We got it. We can write down the time, almost the time this nigga gonna go bad. But they had not been keeping a record of how we got here. You see what I mean? We went through certain changes before we even got here. Let me get back to where we are. So this Islamic Institute for Counter-Zionist American Psychological Warfare mean that we have to know what we're doing. That's the first thing. You have to know what you're doing. In the first case, you have to know this system, its peoples, and what have you, so you can forecast the behavior of let's call him boss man for a minute. Okay, after we get them down pat and deal with them for I don't know how long, okay, we have to now estimate. We've been dealing with the Zionist too. When do we go out of the FBI orbit into the Zionist orbit? And you got to be aware. You got to be aware. I'm saying we're aware of when the takeover creeps in. We can tell by demonstration guys walking with a camera to take pictures of certain demonstration. And then they get caught. Is that all right? Sure. It's fine. Let them get the pictures, because we know we got to add up now. When they see those, what are they going to run through their mind? When they see me on a certain, I think I was talking to you about the students invited me out to Davis. Davis is a big university in California. It used to be an agricultural university, but it's now a real full-fledged, multifaceted. It's a good university, Davis. UC Davis is 20 miles from Sacramento and about 60 miles from Oakland. It's close. So they had a program there. And they had this the program. It was about Zionism. So when they invited me, the first time was 85. And they thought the Zionists passed out a sheet of paper about all the good things they did in Zionism. When I got up, I took the paper and read from the paper and discredited everything they wrote. Then I threw the paper out there, and everybody said, because they was afraid, because the Zionists were saying, we did this for humanity, we did that.